Okay, here. Hello, Savannah. I am your host, Kesha Gibson Carter, coming to you live from Candidly Kesha tonight. We have with us our newly elected state representative, Derek Mallow, and joining us after him will be our former 6th District representative, Mr. Jay Jones. And so we are going to talk about a lot tonight. We're going to talk about our current state legislature and what's going on in the session. And I'm interested to hear about your first days on the job. How exciting. It's so encouraging to see you in that seat. And then we're going to talk about what everyone has been talking about, and that's the CAT CEO. We are also going to talk about some updates on our last city council meeting, as well as a handful of other things I'll share with you. But without further ado, I want to introduce everyone to State Representative Derek Mallow. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alderwoman Kesha Gibson Carter, for having me on your show tonight. Thank you.
You are welcome. And so tell us, how does it feel? How does it feel to be in that seat, and what is it you have been doing since you have been in that seat?
Well, it feels amazing to be in the seat to serve as your state representative. And to the people who sent me to Atlanta, I want you to know I'm here working hard for you in Atlanta. And so right out of the gate on day one of the first things and the first bills that I was able to introduce was a compensation bill that's now before the Appropriations Committee hearing. There were 3 gentlemen, and my predecessor, the Honorable Representative J. Craig Gordon, introduced this bill, and it didn't make it all the way through with the 3 soldiers who were wrongfully convicted of murder. And it's a compensation bill for them for about $1 million each for the 25 years they served for a wrongful conviction of murder. And there's no amount that the state can pay them for that wrongful conviction, but any injustice is one that we should look at and try to compensate. So that was Bill 1 that we sponsored. And then we're working on some additional bills that we have introduced, and we're getting back from Legislative Council right now to introduce in the coming days. I've co-sponsored some legislation as it relates to criminal justice. I co-sponsored a resolution for a censure of Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a congresswoman that was elected that is way off the reservation somewhere, as well as a host of some other legislative things. So hopefully y'all will see those on my page soon.
Okay. And so you have been busy a lot also with just shaking up some things in Atlanta with regard to our CAT board. While you were away, or as you have been away, we had the unfortunate circumstance of having the newly hired CEO of CAT terminated. And lots of people have questions about what happened. And I know you can't talk a lot about what is happening, but just to put people who have been calling you, emailing you, and texting you, to give them some semblance of notice that something is being done or that you are listening, you have heard them. I wanted to just give you an opportunity to offer whatever you'd like them to know.
Absolutely. I'm fully aware of the situation, and I have heard through email, myself, my admin, we've received all the emails, we've printed them, we've read them, we've looked at them. I've tried to return all the phone calls as I could. I don't try to not return a call. So if you call me and I haven't gotten back to you, we go into session usually at 9:30 in the chamber, and we're there until, usually 12, maybe 1 o'clock when we adjourn. So if I miss you, please charge it to my head and not my heart. But I'm aware of the issue with the CAT CEO's termination, and that board, as it currently stands, has made that decision. And, we cannot overturn that board's decision. But what I would encourage everybody to do, and what's within the authority of your elected state representatives and state senators is that we have the opportunity to reimagine that board, because we are the body that put that board together in the first place. It was the General Assembly in 1987 that authorized what we call the CAT Act, that gave subsequent jurisdiction to what you now call the Chatham Area Transit Board. And in 2012, legislation was amended to give that board the governance structure it currently has now. And I think we're going to reimagine what that board looks like to make sure there's more stakeholder representation, and there's more people at the table representative of public transportation. And I think it needs to be a reflection of people who believe in public transportation. And we need to have our business community a part of that table. We need to have a lot more people in the decision-making process that will govern ultimately the direction of CAT as it moves forward. Because what we need to do now is we need to help folks understand how important public transportation is, and what that looks like for our community. And we need to make sure we have people who are advocates for transportation on a transportation board. And so we held a meeting today, and again, we're waiting to see what the board is going to release to the public. I'm waiting on them to, figure out what they have to do to put that out so that the public is aware, because I don't know. I know what the public knows, right? And so we're going to reimagine that, Alderwoman Gibson Carter, and we're going to look at what that looks like and really give some thought and bring some stakeholders to the table to have the conversation about how we look at a new CAT board and what the voters think about that and what they think it should look like.
And so with that said, I guess this gives the citizens, the employees, some semblance of recognition that something is happening. Their voice is being heard. To you in Atlanta from Chatham County.
Absolutely. And if folks are adamant and upset about it, really the powers that be over the CAT board currently make up your Chatham County commissioners. I would voice my concerns with the Chatham County commissioners and let them know that you're not happy with the decision. Because, my role with the state is simply to tell you that we have the authority to look at what that board looks like. The people who sit on that board are county commissioners. And I would encourage folks who are upset or have issues, questions, or comments to ask those who are on the board that are elected officials to share with them their thought process and their reasoning, so that they can understand what that is. Because then as an elected official, we all have to be held accountable by the people. And so I encourage the people to hold all of us accountable.
Thank you for mentioning that. And we want to let our listeners know that individuals on CAT board who currently serve on our Chatham County Commission are Commissioner Bobby Lockett and Commissioner Kenny Adams, two individuals who are newly elected. And then, of course, we have the veteran who is now the chairman of the Chatham County Commission, and that is Chester Ellis. So those are the individuals that Representative Mallow is speaking of, who you can reach out to. Going back to the General Assembly. So last year, this time, there was quite a bit of controversy about the Savannah City Council and our questioning of the need for us to have a lobbyist, in that the lobbyist had not been in place before our arrival, and that the previous council had voted to defer it to us. And so as we were presented with it, we knew that in the session, there are just 4 days, correct? And so your session actually began, this is the second week?
Yeah, second week. So we're only in about, while it may be week 2, we're on technically legislative day 10.
Okay.
Legislative day 10 is where we're not in the depth of the session. To be honest, it's really like when you get to legislative day 20, that's when it's really the rubber meets the road. So we probably have about another week and a half where you're going to see a lot of bills coming up for first readers and second readers and going to committee and being debated and discussed in committee, and then coming out of committee and coming to the well to, if it passes committee. First off, the bill has to pass committee, and then it may come to the floor for debate, and then subsequently a vote to vote it up or down, and to go from there to be signed by the governor so that it can be enacted as a law. So everybody understands the process.
Right. And so we had the occurrence where we questioned the $60,000 that we were approving for Connect South as our lobbyist. And to your point, in just a couple of weeks, you will be halfway into the session. So there, about that time, we were essentially halfway into the session, not to mention the impending pandemic we didn't see coming. And so Alderwoman Miller Blakely and myself were arguing the point as to the need to expend that amount of resource, particularly given the fact that we hadn't yet put together a legislative agenda and there was nothing really that was pressing for us. But we were led to believe that there was a big ticket item or this big money opportunity that could potentially come to Chatham County, come to Savannah, Georgia, that is, and we needed this lobbyist. And in short order, sure enough, we get a few months down the road and we get a letter from, at that time, our outgoing city manager, Mr. Pat Monahan, acknowledging that he was in fact seeking a refund of $30,000 in that Connect South had not produced. And it was bittersweet in that we basically were like, we told you so. But at the same time, to see that level of citizen dollars be expended on a contractual agreement for something that you can see on its face was not going to come through, only to fast forward, recognizing that these individuals said how important it is for us to have a lobbyist. And a few of the council persons went on with this soliloquy of how important it is to have a lobbyist, and Savannah cannot not have representation in Atlanta, and da-da-da-da-da. We'll fast forward to 2021. And do you have a legislative request or agenda from Savannah?
And so I did wanted to reach out earlier today and ask if maybe I missed something because I'm slow to get a state email here. It's almost like hazing when you're a freshman legislator. And so I've not received, and I checked with my admin today, I've not received anything from the city or the county specifically as far as a legislative agenda. And I did get an email today from city staff about a bill that has come through that they are aware of. And Alderman Palumbo sent that email with city staff today about the bill affecting renewable energy. And that bill would take away local municipalities' options in that. So essentially take away local home rule in regards to local municipalities being able to decide clean energy for their communities moving forward. And so I am pulling that bill and looking at that bill, and I believe it's House Bill 150. And so that hit my email just today. And in my conversations with some of the other alderpersons, I don't know if you all have legislative items that you're looking for either outside of what the city is looking for. And we've talked about, I think the bill related to short-term vacation rentals and what that looks like for the city. And so, that's something I'm aware of that the city has talked about. And when we had our delegation meeting back in early December, the mayor did come and say that there was going to be some priorities that they were looking for and that they were looking to see come into this session. And I'm unfamiliar. Maybe they're waiting to see what bills drop so that they can form a position on which bills to support and which bills not to support before they send that out. But I would defer back to city staff. But I have not received anything to this point yet, no.
Well, we're hopeful that, this is, again, a Johnny-come-lately type of approach on behalf of the city of Savannah. And one of the things that I have heard from other state representatives as well as senators was that Savannah doesn't request anything, and that's why we don't receive anything. And I can tell you that as I sat through the legislative and eggs breakfast, where I last saw you,
yes,
you presented as one of the speakers that morning. And it was just so refreshing to see you in that capacity as well. I just see leadership and upward mobility all over you. I'm so excited and proud of you. But one of the things, Representative, I was disappointed about was the fact that as I sat there, we were eclipsing the number of homicides from the previous year. As I sat there, I know that many citizens were losing their jobs, being evicted from their homes, dealing with situations related to healthcare. We have wage issues in Savannah, and all of the lofty goals were aligned with things that did not bode well with me and didn't do anything with regard to moving the needle and keeping with the bottom line of taking care of Savannah citizens and giving her a heartbeat. The chamber's legislative requests were inclusive of support state funding to begin the much needed expansion of the Savannah Convention Center. So I understand that nearly $300 million over the next 3 years will be allocated to expanding the convention center in Savannah, Georgia, where we are still making up over twice the national average in poverty, where our citizens still are working below wage jobs, where we are still dealing with streets that are riddled with crime and bullets flying like we're in the wild, wild west. We are expanding the convention center in Savannah, Georgia, in a pandemic, expending nearly $300 million. In addition, support legislation that provides meaningful tax regulatory relief to existing small businesses. That's a good one. Support proactive military legislation that seeks to protect and expand Georgia's military installations. Supporting state tax credits for continual development of Savannah's logistics corridor. Mm-hmm. Logistics technology corridor, and support renewal of Georgia's historic preservation incentives to encourage investment and continued rehabilitation Georgia's historic structures. Georgia Southern had a $7.5 million request. Armstrong had a $4.5 million request, and $3 million for the Statesboro campus. And Savannah Technical College, $4.3 million to enable the expansion of Savannah Technical College's culinary department and training program. Some of the key pro-business policy positions was to advocate for support the initiatives and budgeting to increase funding for capital projects to Georgia's commercial services, advocate for state support of the I-95 airport interchange at exit 104, support increase in pre-K program fundings that will ensure greater access to early childhood education. That's a good one. Advocate for legislation initiatives and funding to support registered and certified training programs. And it goes on, but nothing with really any teeth to it. And, I had grave concern about that. So what I will be doing is resubmitting, because I, last year, was very active. I had an opportunity to spend some time at the Capitol with the invitation of Lester Jackson. Senator Jackson invited us up, and we spent a great deal of time with him, just going through the processes related to who you speak to, how do you get things moving through the delegation to give consideration. And some of those things for me was consistent with human sex trafficking. Right now, we do not have much of a resource for prevention, aftercare, as well as direct care to those victims who are trafficked. And so I would say Brunswick, Georgia has a small outfit there, but we live in a very vulnerable community close to the airport, close to the I-95 corridor, close to the ports. All of these are elements that contribute to or give some relative ease to sex trafficking. We are a tourism industry. Yeah. And I think it's irresponsible that we have not paid attention to the extent where we put teeth to our care. We have we have a couple of groups that give awareness to sex trafficking, but we've just been talking about it. We've just been talking about it for far too long, and we're not doing anything about it. So I will be presenting to you all a proposal so that we can look at really putting some tangible initiatives together to create programs and activities that will be consistent with prevention education, as well as direct care and aftercare. And we can do that utilizing pre-existing resources. Right here in our community, we have very reputable, viable agencies who have done the work, who have encountered these victims, and they know how to take care of them. We just need that extra support to give greater support to them. We also will be requesting support for programs that will be consistent with recreation activity. We know that that is a direct way to engage our youth, recognizing that they are the primary individuals who are victims sometimes of violent intentional injury, as well as individuals who are committing the crimes. And we know that the governor passed a very controversial bill last year that's consistent with gang activity. And that's a backdoor into sort of fishing these guys into the penal system. And what we want to do is create initiatives and maybe some policies that will counter that bill by way of prevention activity for our youth as well. So those were some of the things that were of concern of mine with regard to some of the agenda items. And we'll be passing more information along to you and Senator Jackson, but we really appreciate you stopping by and giving us an update on things that are moving in the delegation, in the General Assembly, as well as giving us an update on what you are intending to do about the situation related to CAT that everybody in Chatham County is talking about.
Unfortunately, that's the case. And to go back to a couple of the things that you talked about, Alderwoman Gibson Carter. And so when I look at the convention center expansion, that project is going to take about 3 years to complete. The governor had already invested $90 million, I think, in that project the year before. And so we're going to be on the second phase of that now. The project is kind of already committed to. The governor has already put money out for it in his previous budget, and they funded that. And so what I'm asking you all to do is to help me for the folks who get that contract. I'm asking that they employ local Savannahans on that project. Now, this is different than the city's arena project. The state contract, once it comes out, I want to start the process of engaging with that project now and engaging with our local unions now, so that once the contract has been awarded, we can work with that contractor and hold them and say, hey, if you're going to come to Savannah and you're going to build this convention center in Savannah, it needs to be Savannahans put to work in Savannah. That's the whole point of bringing this much investment to Savannah, is so that the people here who are out of work can go to work. And so that's the deal. Don't tell me anything else about the project. If people here can get those jobs that are going to be 2.5 years in construction, that's a sustainable project for people who are in that field to go to work. And if that's what's going to happen, I want to make sure we have the conversations to say, hey, I know you're going to do this, but I need you to make sure we put local people on this project and local people come to work on this project. We can't be quiet and just say, oh, okay, well, we don't want it. It's coming. It's already been invested in. It's going to come through this next budget cycle. Democrats don't control the House. So you got to understand that appropriations is controlled by the opposite caucus. They're going to put it in. It's going to be in that governor's request. But we have to advocate for the rest of the things that we're talking about. And one of the things that you didn't mention was Savannah State also requested $4.5 billion in security and infrastructure upgrades for Savannah State. It was not on that legislative agenda. It was omitted and left off. But Savannah State did make a request of $4.5 million. I've heard their request, and every day I'm talking to somebody else to figure out how to get them back to that $5 million in appropriations in this appropriations hearing in this budget. And so that's very important. And so as stakeholders of the community, what I'm asking you to do is hold your state elected officials accountable by saying we need to have that contract with the state to make sure the state agency that awards contracts has a conversation to make sure that Savannahans go to work on that project. And that's what's important to me, is that local Savannahans go to work. I don't care if you're green, blue, purple, whatever color you are. If you want to work on that project, everybody should have the opportunity to work on that project. And if we need to get our businesses certified as the MBE, DBE with the state of Georgia, so that they can too be a part of that project and that process as well, because with the amount of investment coming in, the subcontractors need to also be minority business owners, and they need to be participating in that project. And at the state level, we can cause that to have a broader stroke to make sure that they are included and engaged with that process. So accountability is key. And I'm saying for everybody who's listening on your show tonight, Alderwoman Gibson Carter, is we have to make sure that we hold people accountable. We can't let people skate by. Hold us all accountable. Make us do what we say we're going to do. And when we don't do it, y'all can call us to the carpet and say you didn't do it. Or at least we can show you that we fought like hell at least.
Right. Exactly. Well, that surely would make it more palatable if we were to not have to struggle to make sure that we have local laborers. I tell you on its face, we've seen the governor make decisions to reallocate resources. He decided to take money away from our local businesses and apply it to the unemployment accounts. In addition, at the beginning of the year of last year, he also decided to forego a previously allocated $3 million for the Tide to Town Trail. So we know what it looks like when you can, with the stroke of a pen, make a decision. And the decision to go forth with expanding that project in the face of a pandemic, and we have these vulnerabilities that exist in our communities, just like the arena project, it just doesn't make sense. Hockey in Savannah, an arena in the middle of the most established African-American neighborhoods that will be threatened with gentrification, the investment of $10 million in brick and dirt, in grass and dirt for parking, when we are steadily encouraging residents in our community to use public transit, but we invest $10 million in a parking pad for visitors and guests. It's all about prioritizing. And that's where that accountability comes into play. And that's what we want this platform to be used for, so that we tell people, don't get caught up in the political banter of what we say we're going to do. If we're not producing, you have to hold us accountable. And that accountability does not start and stop in the ballot box. That accountability starts with your being represented in our meetings, before the meetings, contacting us and letting people know what it is that you want. Absolutely. Letting politicians, that is, know what it is that you want and what you desire for your communities and your neighborhoods. It's refreshing to arrive on the scene of politics at a time where we have the most citizen engagement that I've seen in recent times. And it's a pleasure to be able to shift the dynamic and let citizens know that we are owned by them. And no longer do you have to beg or plead politicians, you just tell us. And so people know who's fighting for them, that's for sure. And we see that you have signed on to follow suit.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate it.
If I could just, in closing, just encourage people, in order to slow down gentrification in communities, we need to look at telling our folks, don't move away because they promise you lower property taxes and a bigger house somewhere else. If you don't have real estate in the community in which you desire to see maintained, it's going to happen every time. We've got to increase home ownership, especially in the African-American community. We've got to get with the Georgia Department of Community Programs. I believe it's DCA. They have money at the state level to help you buy your house. There's money with the city of Savannah with the Dream Maker program. Listen, folks, do not sit at home and think you can't buy a house in Savannah. You can. There are programs to help you do that. Stay as a resident in the city of Savannah. Don't move to a community where they don't have services that you're going to need. Trust me, stay so that your voice can be heard. Hold folks accountable. Don't think grandmama's house is just worth $25,000 because somebody offered you a briefcase full of cash. Don't sell. Know that it's worth more than that. Hold on to it. Property is the one thing God ain't making no more of. There's no more land he's going to make. That's done. So he's made all the land he's going to make. If you got some, hold on to it. I promise you to be worth more in the long run. And so I want to encourage everybody to check out these programs. There's money here at the state level. Don't be fooled. There's money available for the things that we want to make it available for. And you're right, Alderman Gibson Carter. Our budget is where our priorities are. So I want to be accountable to everybody. And y'all know how to reach me. If you don't, my email is derek.mallow, derek.mallow, MALLOW at house.ga.gov. Send me an email. I'll respond back to you and I'll call you back. I'll get back with you.
And we'll make sure your information is placed in our chat as well. Can you repeat your email, your cell phone number, and your address, or however people could get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Listen, you can reach me on my direct extension at area code 912-785-3193. Everybody with a legislative need, you call that number, it rings straight to my phone, or you can reach me on my email at Derek, DEREK.Mallow, MALLOW at house.ga.gov. That's my state email. It comes to my phone. I check it every day. If you have an issue or concern and it's a state issue, I will gladly take your issue, take your concern. If it's a vote that's coming up and you want to tell me your perspective on the vote, send it to me. And I promise you, I will vote the majority of this district. I will not vote what I want to vote. Y'all didn't send me here to do that. Y'all sent me here to vote the majority of what y'all want. And what y'all want is how I'm going to vote, because you sent me here to be your vote and your voice and your advocate. And I'm going to be a servant leader, as I told y'all in the beginning.
Well, we appreciate it so much. And thank you again for stopping by. And we look forward to checking in with you again, maybe before the session is over.
Let's do it midways, because once we get to the end, we'll get the crossover day and Signy Die Day, and it'll be Katie bar the door. It'll be all hell breaking loose in Atlanta.
I hear you. I hear you. I'll probably be in touch with you sooner rather than later to see if we can get our request in as well.
Absolutely. Let's do it. And I think each alderperson may, be reaching out. There are others who are reaching out to me about their priorities and what they think legislatively. So I encourage y'all to do the same thing. And sex trafficking, I think, is something that we can do some lifting on and look at trying to put some resources to it. And let's look at the governor's budget and see what appropriations is allocated and see what we can do to draft legislation to bring some resources to Savannah.
Well, also, if you see another piece of legislation related to changing of our charter, that was another big controversy last year. And I hear that we had a little piece floating around that called for the section of the powers and the duties of the mayor. We have a strong mayor form of government. I'm sorry.
We have a weak mayor form of government.
I was being facetious.
Oh.
Because it actually is operating as a strong mayor form of government. But there was a presentation attempt of an amendment of a request to amend the charter and related laws of the city of Savannah, section 2-201, powers and duties of the mayor of the city of Savannah. This is the problem, Savannah. This is the problem. This is the problem. There was an attempt. The mayor the current statute reads, the mayor shall preside at all meetings of the mayor and aldermen and perform all other duties of the mayor, except such as may be altered or changed by the article expressly or by necessary implication. He shall have a voice and a vote, one voice and one vote, in all meetings of the mayor and aldermen. In times of danger or emergency, the mayor may, with the consent of the mayor and aldermen, take command of police and govern the city by proclamation and maintain order and enforce laws. I must say, I think the mayor has done an exceptional job with COVID. The mayor shall be recognized as the official head of the city. Now, the proposed addition, i.e. change, was that the mayor shall determine the agenda for each meeting of the council members over which the mayor presides, including the scope and sequence of each item on the agenda. The mayor shall, with the assistance and counsel of the city manager, prepare and submit the proposed annual budget of the city of Savannah for consideration by the members of council. I wasn't elected to give consideration to anything. The mayor shall, on a quarterly basis, after seeking the advice of all members of council, meet with city manager to review the city manager's recent performance and to review an update on priorities. So I don't foresee this happening again, but last year under the cloak of the night, there was attempts to change our charter. Those attempts failed. And despite those attempts failing, we still are going forth in the manner of a strong mayor form of government, and that there has been continuous resistance to get items on the agenda. And essentially, we are encouraged as we go forth that our delegation will be mindful of what the Savannah Charter is, just as you are mindful of what the Chatham County Charter is and some of those pieces related to what Kat is going through now. We are not interested in the power grab. The citizens of Savannah have lived by this charter for decades. And this is one of the things that's a part of the educational process of our citizenry. When it comes to changing anything, it is only through proposed legislation that arrives in the form of an agenda item that is placed upon our formal meetings for consideration. And so nothing should preclude an elected official from simply presenting items for consideration. Nothing, as long as they're reasonable. And the council as a whole, as a collective whole, we each have a right to either vote the item up or vote the item down. The piece that's problematic with this attempted power grab is the fact that the minorities on council, for the most part, we came in very aggressively. And anything that we propose 10 times out of 10, it's going to be of great benefit to the most vulnerable citizens in our community. And so some of those things that are consistent with looking at term limits, looking at incorporating impact fees, port container fees, looking at how we stagger our hotel motel tax division, how we are dividing our resources among some of our external partners. It would have been very aggressive. But if we put that on the agenda and in the face of the public, if the majority of those individuals who historically carry the votes, if they vote it down, then their hand will be shown. Then citizens will really see, well, what's wrong with that council member or that older person? Why wouldn't they vote for this? Because this is going to help our community. A wage resolution, it's going to help those who are working in our hospitality industry, making $8 to $10 an hour, cleaning toilets and making beds, when the profit shares of the management and of these big major hotels are going up, but the wages are staying the same. So just FYI, if you see any evidence of a power grab, give me a call. But in the meantime, go forth and prosper, and we appreciate you.
We'll do it. We'll do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, as we go forward, we are going to be looking for our former commissioner, Mr. Jay Jones, to come in and talk with us about some of what's going on with the cat situation. And as we do that, we want to just remind you of a few items that are pressing with the Savannah City Council, and that is our agenda item for the Salvation Army that was really, really huge. Alderwoman Brunetta Lanier was here with me last week talking about the importance of maintaining the integrity and the sanctity of that property known as the Weeping Time property. Hello, Commissioner Jay Jones. How are you, sir?
What's going on?
I think it's just like in a sorority or the military. Once a commissioner, always a commissioner, right?
Oh no, I'm retired.
Do I just call you Mr. Jones?
Just call me Jay.
Jay, okay. Okay. So I'm just giving a little bit of an update. So that item, at the request of the petitioner, at the request of the Salvation Army, was continued, and it will be on our March 11th meeting agenda. And the item related to the purchase of the Drayton Street property, former code compliance that burned, we had a little bit of controversy there. That will be back on the agenda on February 11th. And we are moving on now to talk about some of our budget items on the agenda were inclusive of a $1.7 million purchase for 61 vehicles. We received a number of letters from various individuals who were concerned that these vehicles were not consistent with our goal to become a clean energy community by 2035. And I did not support that agenda item because the citizens are right. We need to pay closer attention to how aggressive we are going about our goals. When we are increasing our mayor and alderman budget by 39%, up to $270,000 for 2 interns at $60,000. I wish I had that internship with benefits, $30,000 a piece for 2 interns with benefits. That's pretty good. Somebody apply. I don't know who the interns are going to be used for. Our mayor's office is already supported by a staff of about 4 or 5 people. So hopefully we'll get some of that support. But I would say $60,000, we could have at least 10 interns. I'm just saying. Also included in that 2021 budget of our mayor and aldermen was $5,000 for breakfast for the various task force that we have,
Wow.
and $5,000 for breakfast for our media. That explains their reporting. They're getting fed. And $17,000 for catering. That expense moved up from 2020 from $12,000 to $17,000. I don't know how much catering we're going to be doing in a pandemic, but
You should stop right there for a second. Can I ask you a question? What kind of result? And please, everybody out there, this is just the opinion of Jay Jones. All he's doing is asking a question. Please, out there, world out there. I know we ask tough questions here. What kind of feedback have we gotten from any of these task force?
I haven't received any.
Okay, I just wanted to know. I apologize. You go ahead and continue reading on.
Yes, sir. And we have another task force that's newly formed. It will be announced tomorrow. It's, I think it's called Savannah Ability Task Force, where they will focus on assuring that visitors and guests have inclusion in their travels in Savannah. Yeah, another task force. But anyway,
they eat like that. If any other task force come open and I can get on there, I'm a regular citizen now. Please put me on these task force because they eat well. So if that's what we do, I don't mind well. So please make sure I live here. So please make sure that I get opportunity to sit on one of them task force if possible.
I will keep that in mind. I'm making a note of that right now. Also, I just wanted to point these things out. For me, it's all about doing what makes sense. It's all about doing those things that we say we're going to do and prioritizing them. And so if we are serious about sustainability, the citizens are right. We need to slow this process and look at what we are doing and how we're spending money. Why is it that every time we need something for our vulnerable communities, or why is it that every time there's an initiative presented by or asked by our citizens, there's the slow roll, there's the wait? But when we need interns, when we want catering, when we want breakfast for the media and breakfast for the task force, and we are expanding our budget for dues for God knows what, the mayor and alderman dues was increased from $350 last year to $13,000 this year. And so in my mind, that's $270,000 that could have been reallocated to sustainability, or undergirding the nonprofit organizations. I did not vote for this budget primarily because we are expending hundreds of thousands of dollars in festivals and parades that essentially have been canceled. The Black Heritage Festival, for one, that's coming up. I think their allocation was $100,000. Why do we need $100,000 for the Black Heritage Festival? Why do we need any of the thousands of dollars that's going to be spent on the Jazz Festival or the Music Festival or the Asian Festival, or the St. Patrick's Day Parade? These things are not happening. And so when
they're still in the budget, though?
It's still in the budget. So it's still in the budget, but what's not in the budget are increased for resources for agencies that serve our children, agencies who are serving the homeless, agencies who are serving individuals who are nutrition insecure, individuals who are raped and abused. So our domestic violence shelters. So in this pandemic, in this time of emergency, the people who are going to be on the front lines of rendering aid are going to be the nonprofits. But we have not made a decision to forego or to take a pause on parades and festivals. So it's just, it baffles me how much we do that does not make sense. And so I cannot, on behalf of the citizens, take no for an answer. We will continue to advocate for these resources to be spent in a more responsible way. And I did want to make mention that we still have this huge issue surrounding the fairgrounds. There was a promise last year that this would be settled by this year. And there's still this huge fight over this prime real estate over in Liberty City. But our Mayor Pro Tem, Estella Shabazz, has been a staunch advocate to make sure that we are moving in the direction that the citizens in that neighborhood want. So we're continuously trying to do all that. So that's it, guys. That's it for the city. Oh, no, one other thing. We went into executive session to discuss the hiring of a new city manager. I'm miffed that we will be looking to spend an additional $23,500 after we already spent $30,000 for the last consulting firm where the search failed. Now, I and all of my council mates can tell you, I was the only council person, despite all of that controversy that came out of that search with the whole ethics hearing, the bogus ethics complaint. And that's not going anywhere. Those people didn't put me into office, and they surely can't take me out. So settle down, everybody. Kesha's good. I'm fine. Let them do whatever they want to do in their imaginary worlds. But what we want to recognize is, I want to tell you that we spent $30,000 for the first search firm. This new search firm that we are retaining is $23,500. I did not vote for it. In addition, we paid for 3 individuals' travel and lodging and meals to come to Savannah to be interviewed. We utilized staff resources. We asked the citizens of Savannah to invest their time in helping us with this search, and we failed you. We got down to 2 finalists, and I was the only council person, which they won't report on this, but I was the only council person who was willing to vote for any of those 2, just so that we could put a person in that seat that will give our citizens of Savannah who work for Savannah, our precious, intrepid staffers, we wanted to give them an opportunity to have some semblance of resolve so that we can start reconciling some of the insanity that's going on in the various departments. We have had a barrage of complaints from the police department to community services, even the HR department, from human resources to code compliance and sanitation. You name the department, nobody is safe. You know why no one is safe? Because we have had 5 city managers. These people have had 5 bosses, 5 in less than 10 years. And so you cannot establish continuity. You cannot establish a rhythm of cohesiveness. You cannot establish and foster environments that are harmonious when you have that much turnover in your top leadership. And on our watch, we've already had 2, and we've barely been in office 1 year. So, there has to be political will and serious intent to really do something about getting our staffers the support they need at the top level. Speaking of top level executives, the CEO of CAT, the departure of the CAT CEO is quite controversial right now, and people want to know what is going on. People want to know what happened. Now, just on the outside looking in, I can tell you at the notice of this, it was very raw for me, recognizing that I suffered a similar situation. In addition, to see some of the names that were associated with Bakar's departure was kind of unnerving to me, to see some of the same little names circulating there. Weigh in on this. I think the dynamic associated with, I don't want to say too much, but you tell us what you can, sir.
All right, so pretty much what I'm gathering, but I can make this statement. I told Leonard Smalls this the other day. I said, yeah, things were brought up in reference to Miss Bakar Sanders, as far as Bakar Sanders Malden, as far as they tried to bring up charges saying that she spent money on this, she spent money on that, but everything she did was within her preview of her threshold as a CEO. And basically, it's a situation where you have somebody from here, and they're doing the way they know how to do it, but they're doing it in their style. We're not used to seeing this style. We're not used to seeing this kind of movement, and we're at the point now where the board isn't in charge, or the board is really got the part of waiting for the lead of the CEO. And I just think that that mixed with, you had a board member who did not vote for Bakari Sanders. I'm just going who did not vote for Bakari for Jumpy. Tried to put candidate in the race during the process of the HR situation, and we accommodated that candidate to be added to that, and the candidate didn't even qualify in the top 20 because they didn't have any transit experience, and we just tried to be settled. Hey, the HR firm we paid $45,000 for to do the work, signing these candidates for us, bring us forth with the best. We go through the process and we hire that person. And we had a board member, and I'll say her name, because I'm not held liable to anything. Commissioner Odell was the person who was adamant about, nah, we don't want to move forward with that person. We and so when it came down time to us to vote on the situation, she said, well, I don't know enough. So we held the process a whole nother month so she can get to know who the final candidates were. And then we give them an opportunity to see the final candidates, and her and Commissioner Stone at the time both said, well, we don't know enough about the candidates, and so they voted against the situation. Now you take that situation, and Bakar Malden gets the job. She gets hired. After she gets, Commissioner Odell was one of the main people who was cheerleading on and trying to fixate the situation and everything work out well. And in doing so, we run into another pothole. And so during the months when Bart was in charge, I was the CEO for 3 of the months. I was the chair of the 3 of those months. And during those times, we discussed the structure of the board, what we wanted to do the board, how we wanted to move on with the board. And in doing so, she came up with a structure, where she wanted chiefs, and she came up with the 6 chief structure. And with the chief structure, it will give us an opportunity to be strong leadership as far as the administrative side was concerned. And it allowed us to be able to have an organization that moved the narrative. And so in that chief structure, they may have not liked it, but it was the best structure we had, because before we hired a card, we had to take our previous CEO quit, and we had to take the COO.
You had to take, say that again. You had to
be in the CEO position, but we had no choice but to move him to the seat.
You broke up a little bit.
We had to take the COO and move him into the position of the CEO. Mm-hmm. All right. Did you hear me that time? We had to take the COO and put him in the CEO's position. So we had to take Mike Brown and put in developer's position. And Mike Brown is a good guy, but he's not a CEO guy. And so that was a failure of us as a board not to have a structure in case the CEO departs. It sounds true where we have people to put in play. So part of that plan was to do the six chief structure, and then not only 6 chief structure, but you have the chief operating officer, which is sound in every company, a chief financial officer, which is sound in every company. But we added a chief administrator. It's something that ties to all the administrative duties, ties into that. You have the chief financial officer, which deals with all the finance. Chief deals with all the employees and staff. We also added the chief safety officer, which is a position that was designated from FTA. So it wasn't something we just went out there and willy-nilly did.
Right.
We added that chief chief safety officer because it was something that was mandated.
Right. Well, I think ultimately, we have a really bad signal. So ultimately, as we close out, I think for me on the outside looking in and just hearing, I think 2 or 3 things are happening here. Ms. Malden is not from Savannah. So I think someone failed to tell her that she was in the great state of Chatham. And that means that here people do what the hell they want to do, even when it's wrong. And the other 2 things are she's Black and she's female. And in that situation, this is a person who is heading this organization as the first African-American female. And I essentially feel like she came in and inherited a culture that was pre-existing at CAT, which was led by all men. And, you know, I tell females who I mentor, females when they're brown, because of the skin that you're in and because of your gender, you have to be twice as good, twice as careful, work twice as hard, do it 2 times faster, and be expected to get twice less. And the dynamics associated with the fact that this was a person who was never formally giving a corrective action plan whereby she could have signed off to say, my board has told me not to do these 10 things anymore. Sign it, go forth and prosper. The fact that you are resurrecting and recycling, essentially, by all accounts, a disgruntled board member. 2, Helen Stone initiated the motion to terminate her. Tabitha Odell seconded that motion. I understand that those were 2 of the people who did not vote for her, the only 2 people who did not vote for her to be hired originally. And then the other elements are consistent with the fact that you had 2 new commissioners who had no relationship with this woman, who had not experienced her. They came in and just made a decision based on information they were given. And so I personally feel like with the set of circumstances, given the fact that Kat was already under a cloud of suspicion with regard to previous situations with CEOs, the organization was struggling. And staffers, just like the city of Savannah, had experienced multiple managers. And in my opinion, it would have been best for the board to have more concern and consideration for the organization, to slow the process to say, you know what, let's implement the normal traditional practices with regard to what happens when you're having problems with an employee. And that didn't happen. So we extend all well wishes and prayers to Kat, their staff, as well as the interim CEO who's there now, Ms. Ragland. We know that those individuals are really dealing with a very vulnerable situation. And so stay the course. We are hoping for the best for you and your organization, and prayers to you all. Good night, everyone, and I hope to see you next week.